Ever imagine, like, a reactor so tiny it fits in a shipping container, powering a whole neighborhood?
That's some serious sci-fi stuff.
Well, that's the future NANO Nuclear Energy Inc., NNE for short, is working on, and that's what we're diving deep into today.
Yeah, and the exciting part is NNE isn't just focused on reactors, they're going all in on a vertically integrated business model.
So, like, the whole shebang.
Exactly, from creating the fuel to getting those reactors where they need to be, even looking at space applications.
Wow, they really want to be the Amazon of microreactors. To understand just how big this could be, let's break down their 5 main business areas.
Sure. So we've got microreactor technologies, that's the core. Then there's fabricating the nuclear fuel, handling transportation of that fuel, exploring how to use nuclear power in space, and even consulting for the nuclear industry.
They're not messing around. But hold on, before we get too deep, what makes NNE's reactors special? I mean, they've got names like ZUS and Odin.
Right. Well, take ZUS. It's a solid core battery reactor, perfect for remote areas or disaster relief.
So, like, after a hurricane, you could bring in clean energy. And what about Odin? What sets it apart?
Odin uses a unique low-pressure coolant system. Then there's Kronos MMR, their patented stationary micromodular reactor system, and Loki MMR, specifically for space applications. Each one targets a specific need.
It's a whole nuclear family. You keep mentioning microreactors, though. How are they different from, those huge nuclear power plants we're used to?
Good question. Microreactors are way smaller than traditional reactors, even smaller than SMRs, small modular reactors. Think shipping container size, capable of generating, say, up to 20 megawatts of power.
That's incredibly compact. Why are these microreactors suddenly getting so much attention?
Their size is a game changer. They can be deployed in places where traditional reactors just wouldn't work. Plus, they're designed with safety in mind from the start, and they have a much smaller environmental footprint.
Sounds like they're tackling those big concerns people have about nuclear energy. But NNE isn't the only player in this field, right?
Definitely not. There's competition from companies like Nuscale Power, who are focused on those SMRs I mentioned, and Oklo, another company working on microreactors.
So how does NNE stand out in this crowded market?
Their vertically integrated approach is key. By controlling the entire supply chain from fuel production through their subsidiary Advanced Fuel Transportation, Inc., all the way to reactor deployment, they can potentially cut costs and streamline everything.
Makes sense, like having all their ducks in a row.
Exactly. But it's not just logistics. NNE is pushing innovation, like with their acquisition of Ultra-Safe Nuclear's patent portfolio. That adds a ton of intellectual property to their arsenal.
And I've heard about their collaboration with the Idaho National Laboratory. That's got to be a big deal, right?
Oh, absolutely. It gives them access to top-notch research facilities and expertise, especially when it comes to navigating the complex world of nuclear regulations.
And don't forget, they're the first movers in the U.S. market, which is a huge advantage. But a company is only as good as its leaders, right? Who's steering this nuclear ship?
Leading the charge is Jay Yu, the founder and chairman. He's got a track record of building successful companies. Then there's James Walker, the CEO, bringing a wealth of experience from his time at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
So we've got the entrepreneurial spirit and the regulatory know-how. Sounds like a winning combo.
And to round out the leadership team, there's David Tiktinsky, head of nuclear regulatory licensing. He's been working with the NRC for almost 40 years. In such a highly regulated industry, that experience is priceless.
Like having an expert guide through the jungle of nuclear regulations. I was also impressed with how NNE handled that recent short seller report.
Yeah, that was a smart move. They hired a top lawyer and publicly addressed the claims. Shows they value transparency and care about their shareholders.
They didn't shy away from the challenge. Okay, fascinating business model, cutting-edge tech, strong leadership, but let's talk money. How are NNE's financials looking?
The million-dollar question, right? Well, this is where things get interesting. NNE hasn't actually generated any revenue yet. They're still in the pre-revenue phase.
So no money coming in yet, but I'm guessing there's more to the story.
You bet. The market seems pretty optimistic about their future. They have a market cap of $1.63 billion and an enterprise value of $1.6 billion.
So even without revenue, the market sees potential. What's driving that confidence?
It's a bet on the future. Investors see the huge clean energy market, NNE's innovative technology, and their strategic position.
Makes sense. But how are they keeping the lights on while they wait for the revenue to come in?
They've been successful with fundraising, securing over $120 million in cash, and their debt-to-equity ratio is really low at 0.06.
So they're not buried in debt, that's good. Realistically, though, how long can they keep going without revenue?
That's a valid concern. Their financial stability depends on continued fundraising and managing their cash burn rate. Remember, building and deploying these microreactors takes time and a lot of money.
It's a high-stakes game, but the potential payoff could be huge. We've covered NNE's business model, leadership, and financial health. But this is just the beginning. In the next part, we'll explore market sentiment, ownership structure, and dive deep into the risks and opportunities facing NNE.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more to uncover. Things are about to get really interesting, so stay tuned.
Okay, so we dug deep into NNE, their business, leadership, and those financials. Now let's step back. What's the market feeling about NNE?
I'd say there's cautious optimism in the air. Analysts are giving the stock a strong buy rating with an average price target of $58.
Wow, $58. That's a pretty big target. What's making them so optimistic?
Well, it's a few things, really. NNE's been hitting the news with good stuff lately. Patents getting approved, that smart acquisition of Ultrasafe Nuclear's portfolio, and those partnerships, especially with the Idaho National Laboratory, those are huge.
So they're checking all the boxes, and their stock price is reflecting that. It's been climbing.
Right. And don't forget, they just got added to the Russell 3000 index. That's a big step, especially for a company their size. It usually gets them noticed by those big institutional investors.
I think they're moving up to the big leagues. So who are these big players holding stakes in NNE? What's the ownership structure like?
As of now, institutional ownership is still pretty low, only about 5.28%.
Okay, not a lot.
But we're starting to see more interest. Some new positions are opening up.
So the big money's dipping their toes in, but not diving in just yet. What about the insiders, the people running the show?
That's where we see real commitment. Insider ownership is sitting at a healthy 38.91%.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah, it means NNE's management team is seriously invested in the company's success.
It's always a good sign when they put their money where their mouth is. Must really believe in NE's potential.
Absolutely. But every investment has risks, right? NE's no different. To get the whole picture, let's do a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Classic SWOT. Love it. Let's start with the good stuff. What are NNE's biggest strengths?
Their vertically integrated business model. That's huge. By controlling everything, from fuel production to getting those reactors out there, they can potentially save a ton of money and make things way more efficient. That's something competitors will struggle with.
And they've got that cutting-edge technology, a strong portfolio of intellectual property thanks to that acquisition, and those partnerships, giving them access to all sorts of expertise and resources.
They're definitely playing their cards right. But let's be real, every company has weaknesses. What are some potential hurdles for NNE?
The big one, and it's a big one, is that they haven't made any money yet. No revenue. It doesn't matter how amazing the technology is. There's no guarantee you'll actually bring in cash.
And like we talked about before, they're relying on outside funding right now. They've been successful so far, but needing to raise money all the time creates uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a tightrope walk for sure. And don't forget the regulatory hurdles. Those are huge for any nuclear company.
You're telling me. Getting approval for these technologies is a long and complicated process. Even with someone like David Tiktinsky, delays and roadblocks can pop up anytime.
I bet dealing with the NRC is about as much fun as doing your taxes for the next 10 years. And let's not forget about public perception. Nuclear energy still scares a lot of people, even on a small scale.
Definitely a valid point. NNE needs to be proactive about addressing those concerns, building trust if they want people to accept their technology.
It's a big challenge, but not impossible.
Okay.
Let's switch gears. What are the opportunities for NNE?
The demand for clean energy is booming globally, and NNE is in a prime position to take advantage of that. Microreactors offer a real alternative to fossil fuels, especially with climate change concerns growing stronger.
It's like they're offering a clean energy lifeline, just when we need it most. And it's not just for developed countries, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
Think about the potential for bringing clean, reliable power to remote communities and developing nations, places where traditional infrastructure just isn't an option.
Now that's a game changer. And isn't the government getting more supportive of these advanced nuclear technologies?
They are. The ADVANCE Act passing in the U.S. is a clear sign that policymakers are starting to see the potential here.
So we've got a growing market, government support, and a technology that could solve some of the world's biggest energy problems.
Sounds pretty good, right?
It does. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. NNE also faces some serious threats. Competition is fierce, with both established players and new startups all fighting for a piece of the pie.
It's a high-stakes race for sure. What other challenges could they face?
Delays or setbacks in technology development, that's always a risk. Even with a great team, things can go wrong, pushing back their timeline.
And there's the whole issue of regulating enriched uranium for these small reactors. It's a delicate balance between encouraging innovation and making sure it's safe and secure.
Exactly. NE has to walk that line very carefully. All right, before we finish up our SWOT analysis, there's one more piece. Short interest. Those betting against NNE. What does the short interest tell us about how the market feels?
Right now, short interest is at 3,425,841 shares, which is 10.19% of the float. The short interest ratio is 0.50 days to cover.
Okay, break that down for me. What does that actually mean for someone thinking about investing in NNE?
Basically, some investors believe that NNE's stock price is going to drop. They're borrowing shares, selling them, and hoping to buy them back later at a lower price to make a profit.
So they're betting against NNE. But a short interest ratio of 0.50 days, that's not a huge number, is it?
No, it indicates a moderate level of short selling. Some investors are skeptical, others are more bullish on NNE's future. It's a mixed bag, which is common for companies in new emerging sectors.
A high-risk, high-reward situation. Each investor has to decide for themselves if NNE is a good fit for their portfolio. We've covered a lot in this deep dive, but there's one question that keeps popping into my head. What does NNE's success or failure tell us about our willingness to embrace new solutions to the world's energy challenges?
Now that's the real question, isn't it? And it's one we'll explore in the final part of this deep dive. Stick with us, because this is where things get really interesting.
All right, so we've gone deep with NNE, looked at their business, the market, everything. But let's zoom out for a minute. What does NNE's story tell us about the future of energy, like the big picture?
Well, they're not just about numbers and stock prices. NNE is really challenging how we think about nuclear energy. They're saying, hey, what if nuclear power isn't these giant centralized plants, but something smaller, more flexible that we can put anywhere?
It's a whole new way of thinking about it. If they can actually pull it off, make those microreactors safe, affordable, easy to use, that could change everything.
Exactly. Imagine remote communities, disaster zones, even developing countries, all powered by clean energy without needing these huge power grids.
Like democratizing clean energy, giving power literally to the people. But there's another piece to this, right? It's not just about the tech. It's about whether we're actually willing to try new things.
Absolutely. There's still a lot of fear around nuclear energy. Those past disasters are hard to forget.
Yeah, Chernobyl, Fukushima, those were major events. But with climate change being such a pressing issue, can we afford to ignore any potential solution, especially one that's zero emission?
And that's the question for our listener, right? As you think about NAE, think about the future you want. Are we stuck with old ways of doing things, or are we brave enough to try something new, even if it makes us a little uncomfortable?
NNE is forcing us to make that choice. They're saying, here's a solution. Are you open to it, even if it challenges what you think you know?
Yeah, and that discomfort, that's where the real conversation starts. We can't ignore the complexities, the potential risks, but we can't let fear stop us either. The stakes are too high.
NNE is just starting out, and there's no guarantee they'll succeed. But their drive, their innovation, their willingness to challenge the status quo, that's powerful stuff.
And whether they make it or not, their story makes us think about the future of energy. It pushes us to ask the hard questions, to weigh the pros and cons, and to consider all our options.
And who knows, maybe someday we will be powering our homes with these tiny microreactors, looking back and seeing this as the moment everything changed.
The future of energy is always changing, but one thing's for sure. It's shaped by the choices we make today.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Nano Nuclear Energy, Inc. We hope you learned something new and maybe even started asking some big questions yourself.
If you want to keep exploring NNE and other companies shaping the future, head over to the Stock Analytics AI YouTube channel. There's tons of great content there.
And remember, all our research is based on AI analysis and public info, but always do your own research before investing in anything.
And if you have any thoughts on clean energy or NNE, leave a comment below. We love hearing from you.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future episodes. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep diving deep.